Have you ever wanted to really, truly get what artificial intelligence is all about, but you just didn't know where to begin? Well, today, that's exactly what we're doing. We are going from zero to hero, breaking down the massive ideas behind one of the most powerful technologies out there.
Welcome to Algorithm Notebook. In this channel, we're going to explore the whole tech field. Things like data science, AI and ML, cybersecurity, and cloud computing. Let's just call it a digital school of technology. Our goal here is pretty simple. Give you the solid foundation you need to understand and maybe even one day build the future. So let's jump right in.
All right, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to figure out what AI actually is. Then we'll get into its main jobs, followed by the toolkit you'd need to get started. After that, we'll get a little peek at the real powerhouse of modern AI, deep learning, and finally, we'll chat about where you go from here. Okay, so let's just get right to it. This is a term you hear everywhere, right? It's in our phones, it's in movies, it's all over the news. But what are we really talking about when we say AI?
To get a handle on AI, you kind of have to separate the dream from the reality. There's this huge sci-fi vision of what AI could be, and then there's the incredibly powerful practical stuff that we're actually building and using right now.
So the original dream, way back when this all started, was, well, it was massive. The idea wasn't just to make a smart calculator. The goal was to build a machine that could actually think, reason, and understand the world just like a person does. A true artificial mind.
And this slide right here, this is so key. The dream was about creating human-like thought, asking why. But the reality of AI today, that's machine learning. It's the engine that actually works, and it's focused on something different, finding patterns in tons of data to make predictions. It doesn't really care about why. It's all about predicting what's next. And that's the most important takeaway. Modern AI is all about learning from examples. Instead of a programmer sitting down and writing a million if-then rules, we just showed the system a ton of data and let it figure out the patterns on its own. The models are data adaptive. They literally get smarter the more data they see.
Okay, so if it's all about learning from data, what are these models actually doing? What are their main jobs? Well, you'd be surprised. It pretty much all boils down to two main things: sorting stuff and predicting stuff.
And I love these analogies because they make it so clear. On one hand, you have classification. That's like a sorting hat for your data. It answers the question, what kind of thing is this? On the other hand, you have regression, which is kind of like a crystal ball for numbers. It answers the question, how much or how many?
Let's dig into classification for a sec. The job is super simple to understand. You give the system something, an email, a picture, whatever, and it puts it into a category. Is this email spam or not spam? Is this a picture of a cat or a dog? Anytime a machine is making that kind of choice, it's doing classification.
And then we have regression. Here, we're not sorting. We're predicting a specific number. What's the price of this house going to be? What's the temperature going to be tomorrow at 3 p.m.? A regression model looks at all the past data to make a really specific numerical guess about the future.
So, how do we actually build these things? I mean, every hero needs a toolkit, right? For AI, that means speaking the right language and having the right tools. So let's take a look at what's in our starter pack.
Yep, math, the language of the universe. First, you got probability and statistics. That's the science of uncertainty. And since AI learns from data, it's absolutely essential. Then there's linear algebra, which is basically the language of data. It lets us turn things like images and text into lists of numbers, vectors and matrices that a computer can understand. And finally, calculus. This is the engine that makes the learning happen. It's how a model slowly gets better and better.
And of course, we need the tools to put that math into action. Python is the undisputed king of machine learning. It's pretty friendly to learn, and there are these incredible libraries that do a ton of the hard work for you. PyTorch is one of those. It's a super powerful framework for building the really advanced AI models. And you can't forget MATLAB. It's a classic, a real powerhouse in science and engineering for working with data.
Look, I know that when you see a list of math and programming tools, it can feel like a lot, but just remember this. Every single person who's an expert today, they were once a beginner. They started right here. This is your hero's journey.
And these are your first tools. You can totally do this.
All right, now we're going to peek behind the curtain at the really powerful stuff. We've talked about machine learning, but now we're diving into its most powerful subfield, something inspired by the most amazing computer we know of, the human brain.
So this was the big question that just changed everything. Our brains are these incredible networks of neurons firing and connecting. So what if we could build an artificial version of that?
And that is exactly what a neural network is. It's a model made of layers of these little interconnected neurons. Each layer takes in some information, does a quick calculation, and passes its results to the next layer. And the magic is that each layer learns to spot more and more complex patterns.
The real game changer was when we started stacking tons of these layers together. That's where the deep in deep learning comes from. Having all those layers, a deep architecture, is what gives these models their incredible power.
So check this out. How does a deep network actually see a cat? Well, it starts with the raw pixels. The very first layers might learn to see simple things, like diagonal lines or curves. The next layers combine those lines to see things like corners or circles. Deeper still, those get combined into eyes or noses or ears. And finally, the very last layer puts it all together and says, based on everything I've seen, that's a cat.
And that brings us to the end of our intro. But it's really not the end. It's the beginning. This is where your adventure truly starts.
So, you've seen the big picture. You get the dream versus the reality. You know the main tasks, and you've even peeked at the power of deep learning. You have the map. You have the first set of tools. So the journey is just getting started, and the real question is, what will you build?